What if the peace you've been searching for was never lost, only hidden? Beneath the noise of fear and the weight of worry lies a stillness waiting to be remembered. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that life does not ask for control, but for trust. Each breath, each moment, carries the chance to loosen your grip and awaken to freedom. This is not escape, it is courage. The courage to step out of fear's shadow, to let go, and to walk gently in harmony with life itself. The door to peace has always been within you. Are you ready to open it? Anxiety is not just a personal issue, it's a cultural epidemic. In modern life, we are taught that control equals strength, but this story reminds us of a deeper truth. Peace is not found in micromanaging every detail, but in learning to trust life itself. From the Buddhist perspective, fear and peace are both seeds waiting to be planted in the mind. Whichever one you nurture will grow. And the good news is, you have the power to choose. By letting go of imagined fears, you create room for presence, trust, and authentic growth. This teaching isn't about giving up responsibility. It's about finding balance, doing what you can with sincerity, and releasing what you cannot control. Think about how much lighter life becomes when you stop carrying burdens that were never yours to bear. The broader lesson is clear. Peace is not something we need to chase. It's already here, beneath the noise. Our job is to remember it, to return to it, and to live from it. In a world addicted to speed and control, this story offers a radical but necessary shift. The courage to let go, the wisdom to trust, and the strength to live with an open heart. It's 2 a.m. and you're wide awake. Your chest feels heavy, your thoughts race in circles, and your phone glows in the dark beside you. Maybe you're replaying a conversation with your boss, wondering if you said the wrong thing. Maybe you're calculating the bills due next month, or imagining how one unexpected expense could send everything spiraling. You toss, you turn, you sigh, and yet the storm inside your head refuses to calm. We've all been there. Anxiety has a way of stealing the night, of dragging us out of the present moment and into 1,000 possible futures, most of which will never arrive. It's like carrying a backpack full of heavy rocks, invisible to everyone else, but crushing you with every step. And the cruel part? Half of those rocks aren't even real, they're only imagined fears. But what if peace was never gone? What if the calm you've been chasing wasn't something to be found out there, but something that has always lived inside you, quietly waiting beneath the noise? Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Here's the truth most of us forget. Life doesn't unfold in the past you keep replaying, and it doesn't happen in the future you're so worried about. Life unfolds only here, in this breath, in this moment. Yet so many of us live caught between yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's fears, pulled in two directions until the present slips right through our fingers. Worry is like trying to predict the script of a movie that hasn't even been written. You imagine scene after scene, disaster after disaster, until your body reacts as though it's already happening. Your pulse quickens, your breath shortens, and suddenly you're fighting battles that don't exist. But here's something Buddhism has been teaching for thousands of years. Peace was never lost. It was only hidden beneath layers of control, of doubt, of fear. And the path back to it isn't about escaping life. It's about learning how to meet life, just as it is, with clarity, with courage, and with ease. In this video, we'll explore 7 timeless Buddhist teachings, not as abstract philosophy, but as practical lessons that anyone, no matter your background, can use to step out of the storm of anxiety and into a calm, grounded awareness. These aren't rules to memorize or dogmas to believe. They're invitations. Gentle reminders that freedom doesn't come from controlling everything around you, but from loosening your grip and allowing life to move with its own rhythm. Imagine, just for a moment, what it would feel like to put down that heavy backpack you've been carrying. To breathe without the weight of what if. To wake up and actually feel present with your morning coffee instead of racing through a mental checklist of worries. To walk into work without fear writing the script of your every word and gesture. That kind of peace is possible. And it doesn't require a perfect life, a perfect bank account, or a perfect body. It requires something much simpler, awareness. A willingness to pause, to breathe, and to trust that right here, right now, you are safe. So let's take this journey together. We'll begin with the first teaching, finding peace in the present moment, the only place life truly exists. Anxiety is a master storyteller. It spins endless drafts of the future, scenes filled with failure, embarrassment, rejection, or disaster. None of them have happened, yet your body reacts as if they're already unfolding. Your palms sweat, your jaw tightens, your heart races. You sit at your desk staring at an email from your boss that simply says, "Can we talk tomorrow?" And instantly your mind leaps. Did I do something wrong? Am I about to lose my job? How will I pay the mortgage if that happens? What will I tell my family? Notice what happened there. One short sentence turned into a movie in your head, a movie with no happy ending. Your mind dragged you out of the present moment and into a future that doesn't even exist yet. That's the trick of anxiety. It convinces you that by running through every possible outcome, you'll be prepared. But in reality, all it does is rob you of peace, draining your energy before life even asks you to act. Buddhism offers a radically simple, yet profoundly difficult truth. Anxiety cannot survive in the present moment. Why? Because right here, in this breath, there is no threat, no future to control, no past to rewrite. Only this inhale, this exhale, this exact moment. Mindfulness, at its core, is not about chanting mantras on a mountaintop or sitting perfectly still for hours. It's about gently returning, again and again, to the now. The place where life is actually happening. Think of it like this. Your mind is like a restless puppy. The moment you let go of the leash, it sprints into the past or the future, digging up regrets, chasing after fears. Mindfulness is the gentle tug on the leash that brings the puppy back to your side. Not with force, not with anger, but with patience. Each time you guide it back, you're training yourself to live where peace already exists. Let me share a story. A woman named Sarah, a mother of 2 from Ohio, once described her struggle with anxiety as living everywhere but here. She would wake up in the morning already rehearsing worst-case scenarios for the day ahead. What if my daughter gets sick at school? What if my car breaks down on the way to work? What if I can't finish this project on time? By the time she actually arrived at work, she was already exhausted. But then she started practicing something incredibly small. Whenever she felt her chest tighten, she would pause and name 5 things she could see, 4 things she could touch, 3 things she could hear, 2 things she could smell, and 1 thing she could taste. This 5-sense practice pulled her out of the imagined future and anchored her in the present. Over time, she noticed her anxiety loosening its grip. She wasn't cured, but she was free in the only place freedom can exist, the now. Science backs this up. Studies on mindfulness meditation show that focusing on the present moment can reduce activity in the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for worry and self-referential thinking. In other words, when you bring your mind to the present, you literally quiet the regions of the brain that fuel anxiety. But mindfulness isn't just a tool for scientists or spiritual seekers. It's for anyone who has ever felt trapped by their own thoughts. And it doesn't require hours of practice. It requires only one thing, remembering. Remembering that peace is not something to chase, but something to return to. Here's a simple practice you can try right now. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for a count of 3. Exhale slowly through your mouth. As you breathe, silently say, "Here, now." Notice the chair beneath you, the ground supporting your feet, the air filling your lungs. That's it. That's the doorway. Anxiety will try to pull you out again, into tomorrow's meeting, next month's bills, next year's uncertainty. But each time, you can return. And every return is an act of strength, a declaration that you refuse to live in a world of imagined threats. Think about how different your life could feel if you practiced this daily. Instead of losing sleep over what might happen, you rest in the truth of what is. Instead of walking into a meeting already convinced of failure, you walk in grounded, present, and open. Instead of spending hours replaying old arguments, you show up fully for the people in front of you right now. This is not denial. It's not pretending challenges don't exist. It's remembering that challenges are best faced from a place of clarity, and clarity can only be found here, not in the shadows of 1,000 imagined tomorrows. So the next time your mind spins out of control, ask yourself a simple question. Where is my mind right now? If the answer is anywhere but here, take a breath and return. Because in this breath, you are safe. You are grounded. You are enough. Peace isn't far away. It isn't lost. It's here, right beneath the noise, waiting for you to remember. Fear is sneaky. It doesn't always announce itself with loud alarms or obvious panic. More often, it slips in quietly like a whisper in the back of your mind. What if you're not good enough? What if you fail? What if they leave? At first, it feels harmless, just a passing thought. But the longer you entertain it, the deeper it takes root, until it begins to shape the way you see the world, the way you act, even the way you breathe. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like fertile soil. Whatever you plant, fear, anger, peace, compassion will grow. And here's the truth. The soil doesn't care what seed you choose. It doesn't judge. It simply grows what you plant. That means if fear is the seed you keep watering, it will multiply until it dominates the entire garden of your life. Let's make this real. Imagine an employee named Daniel. He works in a mid-sized tech company in Seattle. Daniel is talented, creative, and hardworking. But he has one persistent fear: being laid off. Every time leadership announces a new meeting, his stomach knots up. Every email from his boss feels like a threat. Because of this fear, Daniel starts second-guessing every idea before he shares it. He hesitates to take on bold projects. He avoids speaking up in meetings, afraid that one wrong word could make him look disposable. Slowly, his confidence erodes. Ironically, the very thing he feared, appearing weak, replaceable, becomes the reality he creates. Not because destiny was against him, but because fear was steering his every move. Fear is not passive. It is active. It colors the way you see everything. If you're afraid of rejection, every silence feels like abandonment. If you're afraid of failure, every challenge feels like proof you're not enough. Fear narrows your vision, pulling you away from possibilities and toward the one dark outcome you dread most. In relationships, this is especially destructive. Think about someone who fears being left behind by their partner. Out of fear, they cling tightly, texting too much, asking for constant reassurance, monitoring every word and action. But the more they cling, the more suffocated the relationship feels. Distance grows, arguments spark, and eventually, the breakup they feared comes to pass. Not because it was inevitable, but because fear quietly engineered it. Buddhism doesn't say fear is evil. Fear is natural, even protective at times. The problem is when we forget that fear is only a seed, not the whole garden. When fear becomes the only thing we water, it overtakes every other possibility: trust, compassion, courage. So here's the teaching. You are the gardener of your mind. The soil will grow whatever you give it, which means the choice is always yours. Here's a practice you can try. The next time fear rises, don't fight it, don't push it away. Pause. Take a deep breath, and ask yourself one question. Does this thought bring me closer to peace, or does it deepen my fear? This simple question creates a space, a gap between the fear and your response. In that space, you get to choose. You can choose to continue watering fear, or you can plant something new. Presence, trust, compassion. Over time, those new seeds will grow stronger. And as they do, the grip of fear will loosen. Let me tell you about Maria, a single mother in Chicago. She used to fear every aspect of her future, her finances, her health, her kids' safety. Fear was her constant companion, to the point that she couldn't enjoy even the small joys of daily life. One day, she came across the teaching of planting seeds. She began to experiment. Each time she noticed fear rising, she would stop and say out loud, "I choose peace." Then she would take one small action aligned with peace, calling a friend for support, writing down something she was grateful for, or simply taking a mindful breath. At first, it felt silly, but over months, those tiny choices began to shift her life. Fear didn't vanish overnight, but it no longer controlled her. She wasn't just surviving, she was living again. Think about your own life. What seeds have you been planting without noticing? Maybe it's the seed of doubt. I'll never be enough. Maybe it's the seed of comparison. Everyone else is ahead of me. Or maybe it's the seed of resentment. Why does this always happen to me? Now imagine if, starting today, you planted something different. Just one small seed of trust. I am capable. One seed of compassion. I forgive myself. One seed of presence. This moment is enough. The garden of your mind will not change overnight. But with each choice, with each seed, you are creating a future rooted not in fear, but in freedom. Fear wants you to believe it is destiny. But it's not. It's just a seed. And you hold the watering can. We live in a culture that celebrates control. From the moment we're young, we're told to take charge of your future. Make a 5-year plan. Hustle harder. The message is clear. If you want to succeed, you must grip life tightly with both hands and never let go. Control becomes the measure of strength. But here's the paradox. The tighter we grip, the more life seems to slip away. Buddhism offers a counterintuitive truth. Real strength is not in holding on, it's in letting go. Picture this. A father named Robert, living in suburban Texas, had always dreamed that his son would follow in his footsteps and become a doctor. He mapped out everything: high school courses, summer internships, even which college would look best on a medical school application. But his son Ethan had a different dream: to pursue art. The more Robert pushed, the more Ethan resisted. Conversations turned into arguments. The harder Robert tried to control his son's path, the further their relationship drifted apart. One evening, exhausted from yet another fight, Robert finally stopped. Instead of pushing, he asked, "What do you really want?" Ethan's voice shook as he answered, "I just want you to see me, not your plan for me." That night, Robert learned something profound. Letting go didn't mean losing his son. It meant finally connecting with him. Think of water held in your hand. If you squeeze too tightly, it escapes through your fingers. But when your hand is open, the water rests calmly in your palm. That's the essence of surrender, not weakness, but clarity. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning effort. It doesn't mean becoming careless or lazy. It means releasing the illusion that you can force every outcome, control every person, and script every detail of life. You still show up, you still act with sincerity, but you stop carrying the crushing burden of outcomes you cannot command. Here's the irony: when you finally release control, something powerful begins to happen. Your energy returns. Your mind clears. You begin to notice possibilities you once overlooked. Support appears from unexpected places. It's as if life, once treated like an enemy to be conquered, shifts into an ally walking beside you. A woman named Jenna experienced this firsthand. She worked tirelessly at her corporate job, controlling every detail of her projects, micromanaging her team, and staying late every night to make sure nothing slipped through the cracks. On the outside, she looked successful. On the inside, she was exhausted, anxious, and deeply unhappy. One day, a mentor asked her, "Do you believe life can support you, or do you think it's all on your shoulders?" That question struck her like lightning. She realized she had been living as if the world was against her, as if everything depended on her constant vigilance. Slowly, she began to let go, delegating small tasks, leaving the office on time, trusting her team. The result? Not only did her projects thrive, but she finally had the energy to enjoy her life. She laughed more. She slept better. She even started painting again, something she had given up years ago. Buddhism calls this practice surrender. But don't mistake it for resignation. Resignation says, "There's nothing I can do." Surrender says, "I will do what I can, then I will release what I cannot control." It's the difference between planting a seed and pulling on it every day to force it to grow. One is natural and wise. The other is futile and destructive. Growth comes not from force, but from trust in the process. Here's a simple reflection you can try. Think of one area in your life where you're gripping too tightly. Maybe it's your career, your finances, your relationship. Ask yourself, What am I afraid will happen if I let go just a little? Sit with that fear. Breathe with it. Then ask, what might I gain if I loosen my grip? Often, what we're really afraid of is not loss, but the vulnerability of trust. Yet trust is where true strength is found. Letting go is not an ending. It's a beginning. It opens the door to inner peace, to freedom, to a strength that is unshakable because it's no longer tied to controlling outcomes. It's rooted in clarity, in trust, in the deep knowing that life can carry you. So the next time you feel yourself clinging, gripping, trying to force things into place, remember this. Real strength is not in how tightly you hold on. Real strength is in the courage to open your hand, to release, and to allow life to rest where it belongs. Control and trust cannot walk the same road. The more tightly we cling to control, the further we drift from trust. And yet, when we choose trust, control begins to loosen its grip. For many of us, that feels terrifying. After all, we've been taught that safety comes from managing every detail, double-checking the locks, rehearsing every conversation, planning for every possible outcome. But has that control ever truly brought you peace? Or has it only fed exhaustion and anxiety? Let's talk about imagined fears. Picture this. Emily, a 35-year-old teacher from Denver, lay awake night after night, convinced she was going to lose her job in the next round of budget cuts. She rehearsed conversations with her principal, imagined having to move her family, and even played out the humiliation of telling her parents she'd failed. For months, she lived in dread. When the budget decisions finally came, she wasn't laid off. In fact, she was promoted. All those sleepless nights, all those tears, all that weight she carried, none of it ever happened outside her mind. This is what Buddhism reminds us. The heaviest burdens we carry are rarely reality itself. They're the stories we create about what might go wrong. The human mind is a storyteller. It writes drafts of disasters long before life ever calls for them. And because our brains don't always distinguish between imagination and reality, we suffer twice. Once in our minds and, occasionally, once in reality. But most of the time, the feared event never arrives, which means we've spent hours, days, even years battling shadows. Think about it. How many times have you dreaded a conversation, only to find it ended with understanding? How often have you braced for the worst, only to discover things were gentler than you expected? Worry magnifies possibilities until they feel like certainties. But a thought is not a fact. Here's a practice to break the cycle. When fear rises, pause and ask yourself softly, is this happening right now, or is this only a thought? 9 times out of 10, you'll discover you're fighting ghosts. And the moment you see that, something shifts. The weight lifts, the breath deepens, the present moment returns. Trust is not passive. It doesn't mean ignoring your bills or abandoning responsibility. It means doing what you can, and then allowing life to do its part. Think of planting a seed in your backyard. You water it, you protect it from weeds, you make sure it has sunlight. But you cannot pull it upward to force growth. The roots develop in darkness, unseen. The timing is beyond your control. Trust is knowing that your effort is enough, and that life has its own rhythm. Let me share another story. Michael, a small business owner in Florida, used to refresh his bank account every hour during slow seasons. He feared financial collapse so deeply that he couldn't enjoy dinner with his family or sleep through the night. One evening, his wife asked him, "Do you think staring at the numbers is going to make more money appear?" That simple question cut through the illusion. Michael realized he was feeding fear, not facts. He began setting boundaries, checking his account once a day, then shifting focus to what he could actually control, building relationships with clients, improving his services. Slowly, his business stabilized, and more importantly, his peace returned. At the heart of this teaching is a liberating truth. You don't have to fight every storm. Some storms exist only in your imagination. And when you stop fighting them, when you stop feeding them, they fade. Ask yourself now, what imagined fears are you carrying? Maybe it's the fear that you'll never find love, the fear that your career is about to collapse, or the fear that you're not enough. Notice them. Acknowledge them, then breathe and ask, is this real right now, or is this only a thought? chances are, life in this exact moment is gentler than you think. And when you return to this moment, trust can begin to grow. Trust is not about giving up control. It's about recognizing you never had as much control as you thought. It's about shifting from tension to openness, from panic to patience. When you trust life, you're no longer clinging desperately to every detail. You're participating fully, doing your part, and allowing the rest to unfold. And here's the surprising part. The more you trust, the more life shows up for you. Support appears from unexpected places. Opportunities arrive you couldn't have planned. Timing works in your favor in ways you never imagined. So tonight, when your mind starts racing through worst-case scenarios, remember this. You are not here to control every scene of the story. You are here to play your part and allow the story to reveal itself. Trust doesn't remove uncertainty. It makes space for peace within it. Worry doesn't always come crashing into our lives like a storm. It often creeps in slowly, disguised as caution, as responsibility, even as love. A small hesitation here, an extra layer of planning there. At first, it feels harmless, maybe even wise. But over time, those small hesitations knit themselves into walls. And before you realize it, you've built a cage out of your own fear. The cage is tricky because it doesn't feel like punishment. At first, it feels like safety. You tell yourself, I'm not chasing that dream because it's too risky. Or, I won't speak up in this meeting because I don't want to sound foolish. Or, I'll stay in this relationship even though it's draining me because at least I won't be alone. Each decision feels small, but together they shrink your world until freedom feels like a distant memory. Take Mark, for example, a 42-year-old accountant from New Jersey. He always dreamed of starting his own business, but the fear of failure whispered louder than his passion. What if I lose my savings? What if no one supports me? What if I fail and embarrass my family? So he stayed in the same cubicle for 20 years. Safe. Predictable. But every time he walked past a coffee shop owned by a local entrepreneur, he felt the sting of what could have been. Worry had promised him safety. Instead, it delivered regret. Buddhism teaches that letting go is not a loss, it is a beginning. When we release the grip of fear, we make space for something new. Courage, creativity, love, and joy. Picture yourself standing in a river. If you cup the water tightly in your hands, it slips away. But if you soften your palms and let the current move, the river carries you. That is surrender. That is growth. Here's what letting go looks like in practice. A woman stops rehearsing every word before a date and instead shows up authentically, nervous laugh and all. A father stops micromanaging his kids' homework and instead trusts them to figure things out, even if they stumble. An employee stops obsessing over what her co-workers think and starts sharing her ideas freely. In each case, letting go doesn't make life perfect, but it makes life bigger. It makes life free. Psychologists have found that chronic worry narrows the brain's problem-solving ability. When you're anxious, your focus shrinks, and you miss opportunities right in front of you. But when you release that grip, your perspective expands. You see options, possibilities, solutions you couldn't see before. In other words, letting go doesn't just reduce anxiety, it creates room for growth. Consider another story. Lisa, a nurse in California, used to carry the weight of every mistake she might make. Before every shift, she would lie awake imagining disasters. What if I miss a dosage? What if I overlook a symptom? What if someone gets hurt because of me? The fear consumed her, and ironically, it made her less effective. Finally, after months of sleepless nights, she tried something different. Each morning, she told herself, I will give the best care I can, and I will let go of what I cannot control. She still worked hard, still stayed focused, but she stopped punishing herself with imagined disasters. The result? She became calmer, more present, more effective. Patients trusted her more. Colleagues leaned on her leadership. By letting go, she didn't lose her strength, she found it. Here's a reflection you can try right now. Ask yourself, how much of my energy today went into worrying about things I cannot change? Be honest. Was it the email your boss hasn't replied to? The economy? The traffic you'll hit tomorrow? Now imagine if that same energy had gone into something you can influence. Connecting with someone you love, taking a step toward a dream, or simply resting so you have strength for tomorrow. This is the trade-off we make every day, feeding worry or feeding growth. Letting go is not passive. It is one of the deepest forms of bravery. It takes courage to loosen your grip, to step out of the cage of safety, to live with an open and unguarded heart. But when you do, life expands. Dreams that once felt impossible become within reach. Relationships deepen. Creativity flows. Growth doesn't begin when everything is under control. Growth begins the moment you stop trying to control everything. So ask yourself gently, what if freedom is waiting, not in holding tighter, but in letting go? The moment you release, life begins to carry you. And that current, the quiet intelligence of life itself, is far stronger and wiser than fear ever was. Life is not a puzzle to solve or a competition to win. It is a rhythm, like music, inviting us to listen and respond. Yet so often, we try to grab the conductor's baton and control every note. We analyze conversations long after they've ended, force decisions before they're ready, refresh our phones waiting for messages that haven't arrived. We believe that if we don't hold everything tightly, life will fall apart. But here's the quiet truth Buddhism teaches. Life already knows how to flow. The river doesn't need you to push it. The ocean doesn't need you to command it. And your life doesn't need you to orchestrate every detail. It needs you to participate with awareness, to act where you can, and then to trust the unfolding. Think about a time you forced something, a relationship, a job, a decision. How often did it unravel or leave you drained? Now remember the moments you allowed things to unfold naturally. More often than not, those moments carried surprising ease, as if life itself stepped in to support you. When we interfere less, life flows more. When we loosen our grip, clarity rises. When we trust, peace returns. Take David, for example, a 50-year-old who had spent his whole career striving, pushing, controlling every detail of his success. He checked stock prices 10 times a day, micromanaged employees, and rarely took a vacation. His body ached, his sleep was broken, his joy was gone. One day, his doctor told him bluntly, "If you don't find a way to let go, stress will kill you." For the first time, David realized control was not keeping him safe, it was destroying him. Slowly, he began to trust more, delegating tasks, spending weekends without checking email, even taking long walks without his phone. And what happened? His business didn't collapse. His family didn't fall apart. In fact, both thrived. The moment David stopped trying to direct every scene, life began working with him instead of against him. Here's the lesson. You were never meant to control the ocean. You were meant to learn how to ride its waves. That's the heart of Buddhist wisdom. It doesn't tell us to abandon effort or to live carelessly. It tells us to care deeply, but not to carry everything. To plant seeds with sincerity, but not to force their growth. To show up fully, but not to tie our peace to outcomes we cannot command. So pause and reflect. Where in your life are you interfering too much? Is it the job offer you're trying to force? The relationship you're suffocating with worry? The dream you're gripping so tightly it can't breathe? Ask yourself, what would it feel like to loosen my grip here? Not out of laziness, but out of trust. That's where peace lives. Not in controlling, but in releasing. Not in grasping, but in allowing. When you begin to live this way, something remarkable happens. You notice synchronicities, doors opening where you thought there were walls. You feel supported by people, by timing, by life itself. You discover peace not as a distant goal, but as the natural state beneath all the noise. This is not escape. This is not apathy. This is living with balance. Doing your part, then letting life do the rest. At the end of the day, peace is not out there waiting in some perfect future. It's here, right now, in this breath. The more you release, the more you trust, the more you let life flow, the clearer this truth becomes. Peace was never lost. It was only hidden. And now, you know how to remember it. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us continue creating content that supports your journey. But more importantly, I'd love to hear from you. What's one fear you've been carrying that turned out to be only imagined? Drop it in the comments. I promise your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it today. And if you're ready to go deeper, check out our next video, where we explore practical mindfulness exercises you can use anywhere, at work, at home, even in the middle of a stressful day. Remember, you're not here to control the ocean. You're here to learn how to ride the waves. Until next time, breathe deeply and live gently.